Um, okay. So I would like to start this talk by giving a huge thanks to Mr. Downs and Mr. Smith for letting this all happen. I'd like to say a thank you to Mr. Pearson for letting me send him a few different versions of this talk. I'd also like to thank Ms. Hardy for letting me read my speech today, and to Anna and Ella for letting me read my talk to them more times than was probably necessary. For those of you who know me, hello again. And for those of you who do not, my name is Caroline Hopkins. I was a four-year sixth former and a part of the 2021 graduating class. I'm so excited to be here sharing my takeaways from my 4 years here at Millbrook in hopes to encourage all of you to take advantage of a community that you will miss so dearly when your time here is gone. I'm the walking testament to this, so here's my story. I'm so nervous, oh my goodness. So before my 4 years at Millbrook, I went to a day school in Charlotte, North Carolina. I wanted to leave the day school I was at because every day seemed to pass me by so quickly, and I did not feel that I was making meaningful relationships or benefiting from my time there. So my parents and I decided to speak to a boarding school consultant. I will never forget 14-year-old Caroline Hopkins arriving in the consultant's office where the one sole question she asked me was, "What do you look for in a school?" I said, "A school with kind people." Without hesitation, she replied, "Well then Millbrook would definitely be your best option." Thus, in 2017, I embarked on my 4-year journey at Millbrook. Now you're probably wondering, why am I here to give this talk? It's super simple. I've never felt this passionate about another place in my life. I think of Millbrook like a puzzle. We are all individual pieces coming together to create a bigger picture. But sometimes, when you're looking at just one piece, you can't quite see the full image. What I realized is when you're in this situation, it's hard to take a step out of it to understand the lessons that you are learning. So, by giving this talk, I wanted to help make that image a bit clearer for those of you who are still trying to see what all of these pieces will create. My years at Millbrook were some of the best years of my life, not just because of all of the amazing moments, but because of the not-so-good moments too. Those hard moments are what shaped me to who I am today. Keyword, moments. They didn't last, and what I noticed is that every time I came out on the other side a better person. From my third form year to my sixth form year, I grew in ways that at home I never would have been able to. So, without further ado, here are my stories and my takeaways. I had a tough year my freshman year. Socially, I would give myself an A. I felt like I was doing great. However, academically, I had a solid F. I was suffering immensely. I was completely infatuated with making my new friends and figuring out how to completely survive in a new space that I let my grades fall under me. It was the second semester, and there was no way I could continue getting those low grades. I had conversations with my teachers, but I was having such a hard time figuring out what to do to get back on track. I will never forget when Mr. Downs pulled me into his office and he said, "Where do you want to see yourself go in 4 years?" We made a list of schools, and together we devised a 4-year plan of the grades that I needed to make, step by step, semester by semester, to get into the school of my dreams, Texas Christian University. You don't have to know exactly where you want to go or what you want to be, but my point is to create a plan of where you want to see yourself go and the steps to do so. Set goals for yourself to achieve in these 4 years, long-term and short-term. I know that if it weren't for that pivotal moment, I would have continued down a path of self-destruction. And if it weren't for Mr. Downs laying out a visual plan, then I would have not been able to achieve one of my greatest accomplishments to date. You will be so proud of yourself when you reach these achievements. So, for the third formers all the way in the back, I want you to know that it's never too early to plan or to reach out for help when you need it. Like I said, my third form year was tough, and by far my most transitional time at Millbrook. I learned the most about myself during that year, and it set the tone for the things that I needed to improve on in my life. That year showed me the type of people I wanted to surround myself with, and the type of person I wanted to be. As you all know, sometimes living away from home is hard. You don't have your parents around you to tell you when and where you must be, or what you can and cannot do. Sure, at boarding school you have rules, but still, it is up to you to be accountable and to make sure that you are upholding those boundaries. If not, the consequences are a bit bigger than a stern talking to. Suspensions are sometimes a taboo topic to discuss, and sometimes it is uncomfortable, but it's no secret. I was suspended. I made the stupid decision to sneak out of my dorm room past 11 p.m. check-in. I know, crazy, right? When Mr. Scoveland pulled me into his office, I felt a plethora of emotions, such as embarrassment, sadness, anger, and disappointment. I knew that I had lost the trust of my teachers and peers and parents, and I could not possibly bear that feeling. I also knew that I should have made a better choice. Before it was time to serve my suspension, I was able to apologize to the people that my decision affected, such as Mr. Scoveland, the teacher who was on duty that night, the dorm head, and my friends in Clark. My 3-day suspension ran into spring break, so I had a lot of time at home with my family to reflect on my decision and to create this elaborate idea in my head that the return to school was going to be a horrible one. So, when spring break came to an end, it was time for me to come back to school and finally face what I was afraid of. Stepping back on foot to campus was so scary. I was a freshman who had just been suspended, and I knew that eyes were on me from my peers, the older kids, and teachers. I thought that everyone was going to be judging me. But what I was met with when I got back to campus was forgiveness, love, and a lot of people who cared about me and wanted to see me succeed. Mr. Downs once said to me, "The people are the best thing and the worst thing about Millbrook, because we are in such a tiny community that people know when you just had a huge accomplishment and when you mess up, but regardless, they have your back." My teachers were checking in on me, as were the other kids, seeing if I needed someone to talk to or anything, and it brought me back to why I fell in love with Millbrook in the first place: the people. Boarding school is learning how to grow up, and sometimes you won't make the best or right decisions, but there are so many people that you can lean on and look to for guidance when you're in a situation like I was. Ask yourself, is it worth it, before making a decision that might impact you? Consult your friends, asking for their opinion. Accountability is the most important lesson that you can learn. It's about being honest with yourself and being honest with others. Malactions have consequences with everything in life, which is inevitable. But in a place like this, you are so lucky to have people to lean on, people who will have your back, lend a hand when you need it, and help you come back from a misstep. Just so you know, you can come back from making a wrong decision if you can hold yourself accountable. My junior year was when I turned myself around at Millbrook and showed my first signs of actual maturity. During my freshman and sophomore years at Millbrook, I had learned a lot, but I had not given it my all. And because of that, I felt I couldn't do many of the things I was very much capable of. I was in my own mental jail and I couldn't escape. By my junior year, I knew that I could not keep putting myself through all the sulking and dwelling, wondering why I had it so rough, when really, I was just being plain lazy. So finally, a light bulb flashed in my head, a solution to everything. And that was to stop sitting there thinking that everything would just come to me and do the work to get the outcome that I wanted to see. That year, I decided to prove myself wrong and show myself that I could be a great student, athlete, friend, and most importantly, a great leader. That was what really changed everything for me. I say that my junior year was my best year at Millbrook because I felt the most independent that I had been in a while. I stopped worrying about everyone else and focused on myself. I actively chose to throw myself into my schoolwork, friends, sports, and dorm activities, all while having a lot of fun. I started making lists every day of what I needed to do in my planner, which, by the way, is the best planner. And when you go to college, you might, in fact, try to duplicate it. I mean, Ella did. I made a list of what I would do from the moment that I would wake up to the moment that I would go to bed, just to remind me of the little things that might slip my mind. These lists became most useful and important because they allowed me to get organized. Next, I started building the relationships that I would have with my teachers, like making sure I was telling Mr. Pearson my very interesting weekly life updates, bothering Mr. Downs, having quick chats with Miss Lizzie, helping Miss Bernard in admissions when she needed it, or going to extra help with Mr. Westman for French, even when I couldn't necessarily speak the language that well. But it was the effort that I made to maintain these relationships that paid off and strengthened the great support system that I had around me. Sports became my mental reset. Every day I would go down to the turf and completely forget about whatever was happening outside of that hour and 30 minutes. I would make sure that I was being an encouraging teammate and trying to set a good example for the younger girls. Having extracurricular activities to keep me busy became something that I looked forward to every single day. It was doing these things that not only proved to myself, but also proved to others that I could be a leader. By building relationships and showing up, I was setting myself up for success in ways that I could not comprehend at the time. So, when I look back to my sophomore year, and I was devastated that I didn't get peer counselor, I questioned myself and why I did not get it. And the answer became quite clear. I was not ready for it yet. Getting turned down and hearing no a lot is a confidence killer. But there are going to be so many times in our life where we hear the word no. So we must not let the word deter us from trying until we hear the word yes. I was super nervous to try for peer counselor again my junior year, but after having conversations with those who turned me down and asking what I needed to change, I believed that I was finally ready. When the email came out that I was selected, I was ecstatic. I could put my skills that I had developed and learned to use. And it was rewarding to know that the adults around me believed in me too. I put the work in to see the outcome that I wanted to see, and I reaped the benefits. So, for the fourth formers, I want you to know that hearing no should be a word that you use to push yourself until you finally see yes. And for the juniors, I want you to know that I know this year seems stressful, but if you buy in, it makes everything worth it. It opens so many doors, and it motivates you to create the future that you want to see for yourself. A year ago today, if I were to tell my mom that I was giving this chapel talk, she would have laughed and told me that I was absolutely crazy. Let me explain. Going to Millbrook during COVID was pretty awful. With all of the restrictions, it seemed like my whole entire senior year was being ripped away from me. We had absolutely no privileges, and Millbrook just wasn't the same. I was ready to leave and never look back. Honestly, if anyone were to tell me a year ago today that I would be giving this chapel talk, I would tell them never in a million years would Caroline Hopkins ever give a chapel talk, like ever. Well, that's super ironic, because here I am. I know that I said my freshman year was a tough year at Millbrook, but my senior year was the hardest year of my life. This year was the most isolated and restrained I had ever been. I received the student leadership position I wanted. I hadn't seen my friends since midsummer. I was a senior, and I missed Millbrook a lot. All of these things were finally going to happen. So what could go wrong? But COVID-19 had plans of its own. And for someone who is an extrovert, then you know that being alone is an absolute nightmare. For the fifth and sixth formers, I'm sure you felt a shock too, getting back to school and realizing that Millbrook was just not the same as it used to be before COVID. Move-in day came, and it was time for me to begin my senior year where it all started, Clark. A senior living in a freshman dorm had already made me anxious, especially during COVID. Over the summer, I had phone calls with Mr. Downs and Mr. Pearson, trying to get as many answers as I could out of them as to what school would be like when I returned, asking questions like, will I see my friends? Am I going to be by myself? All questions they did not know the answers to themselves. I mean, who would? I knew that I wanted to stick it out because I had signed a contract that said I would. But the teachers who put me there told me that I could help guide those young girls and be the person that I would have needed when I was a third former. I knew that they were right, and I wanted to do that. But getting put into Clark was so hard. All my friends in Abbott, All my friends were in Abbott, and it seemed like everyone had a much better time than I was having. Being alone, isolated in a dorm room, without a roommate, and not knowing anyone is super difficult. But during COVID, I felt that nothing could be worse. The most challenging times for me were when we would have to quarantine upon arriving to school after any break. I absolutely dreaded that quarantine and our 30-minute scheduled outdoor time. We were supposed to be enjoying the barn during study halls, taken away from us. We were supposed to be getting open weekends, taken away from us. We were supposed to be getting dances, taken away from us. Field hockey games, taken away from us. Going into my friends' rooms, taken away from us. One time, I gave a hug to my boyfriend, and I got a COVID strike. The list goes on and on. The restrictions that were put into place to me seemed absolutely insane. But super deep down, I knew that it was for the safety of this community. I felt infuriated with Millbrook. Why now? Why my senior year? Why does this have to be the way that I remember Millbrook? I was supposed to be the emotional support for the freshman girls, but I was even more emotionally unstable than any freshman girl. I mean, poor Grace Spaldwin, who lived beside me. I had made it very apparent to my teachers that I was struggling during this time. I was not holding the commitments that I had agreed to, and it felt like I was reliving my freshman year all over again. So, how was I able to see the good in all of this, despite the bad attitude I had towards Millbrook? It was around this time last year when I had a conversation with Miss Fryman that reversed my mindset and allowed me to end my senior year on a positive note. I will always remember the time when I walked into the common room of Clark. I had been having a rough day, and I had brought it up to her how I was feeling. I explained that I was just so done with this whole year, and she said to me the most important thing that I will never forget. I went something along the lines of, "Caroline, I remember when I was in high school, and I cannot wait to get out of there too. I had 4 years of it, and by the time you're a senior, you're sometimes just ready to get out. But you do not want to burn these bridges that you have made. You're going to want to eventually come back and see the teachers and friends who helped you along the way, and you're not going to want to come back knowing that you ruined these relationships. Impressions are everything. But leaving a good last impression will allow you to continue to keep these doors open if you need anything down the road. You can choose to leave here either burning all of the bridges, or you can leave a great last impression." I don't think Miss Fryman understood how that conversation changed my outlook on everything, but she was so incredibly right. First impressions are crucial, but last impressions are more memorable. So with that, I decided I was going to make lemonades out of some sour lemons and just add a little sugar. It shouldn't taste too bad, right? What I now realize about my senior year is that I wasn't looking at all that I had. I'm not saying that the hard situation I was in was necessarily going to go away, but if I had changed my perspective on things, then maybe the situation would have been easier to work through. I was able to see my friends every day. I was able to have a prom. I could still play sports. I still had in-person classes, and yet again, the people were there to pick me up when I was down. If I appreciated the little things that were happening, then maybe I could look back at my time at Millbrook and remember all of the amazing memories, because the bad moments just faded away. Like I said earlier, moments, they don't last, and you will always come out on the other side a better person. I remember the little things, like when Miss Fryman would leave her favorite candy outside of my door, or send me nice texts just to bring a smile to my face. I remember my talks with Miss Peterson during study halls. I remember my funny advising meetings, laughing with my best friends, and I remember every single good thing that I wish I could just rewind and feel those moments again. If I could go back and do it again, just to relive Millbrook, I would, except maybe minus COVID. So, for the seniors, so I can look up at you guys. So for the seniors, I want you to know that even though your time is almost coming to an end, and you might be feeling a little bit over it, I'm here to tell you to cherish every single second you have here. Cherish the good and the bad, and know that it's never too late to leave an amazing last impression. You're going to miss this place and your friends and the community that you built that knows you so well. When you go to college or wherever your next journey takes you, there will never be as many people that care about you and want to see you succeed as there are in this room. Enjoy the time you have with your teachers and friends. Take the time to appreciate all that you can, and please do not take Millbrook for granted. It will never be the same outside of these places, but these memories that you have created will surely last you a lifetime. Thank you.